Hello, and welcome to Greet the Week. I am Mona Duncan, your host, and today we're going to be talking about clutter. Do you have any clutter in your life? And how do you handle it? So we're going to be talking about clutter. So clutter, it has sometimes it can get away with us of not knowing how to handle it. And so you kind of want your surroundings and your environment to be functional as well as pleasant, but it may not yet be up to the gold standard. And I want you to know that I'm right along there with you. I'm always learning more and more and more. So there's not much to worry about. So we're going to look at some thoughts about making that, clutter monster not be a part of our personality anymore. But we're going to start off with looking at the wellness of our body, our mind, and our spirit. So we have this body, mind, and spirit that pretty much are mind, will, and emotion. Anyway, we are multifaceted individuals with the ability to allow our mind to be changed. And it is changed through not only what we see and hear and feel and all that kind of stuff, but we're also changed by our mind thinks different thoughts through the input that others give us. So I want you to note that I have asserted that we can allow our mind to be changed. Mm-hmm. We can allow that. And and the reason we can is because we're not static individuals. We have all, So I suggest that there may be like 3 life potentials as to how we would look at life. And this also is in keeping with Dr. William Glasser of the Glasser Institute for Choice Theory, is that things are generally neutral, or they're positive, or they're negative. And a lot of it has to depend upon us. So that may look like kind of a middle of the road stance to be taken, but it can be taken in multiple ways. Seeing a situation as neutral is kind of, we talked about this once before, that it is what it is. So what? Now what? Not to be ugly in your face, but it is what it is. And so that neutral is maybe so, maybe no. Maybe I can do something about it. Maybe I can't do anything about it. But then in a thoughtful, if we go with the positive, it is beginning to look at life situations and those people that we're working with and the clutter and all that kind of stuff in a more thoughtful and in an improving mode, kind of setting things up as to how can I make this better? Or we can go with that negative and just completely dismiss it as bunk or become negative in other ways. So how we respond to everyday life situations determines our ongoing effectiveness with all of the needs we have in life. And the heart map and other scientific projects proclaim about the elasticity of the brain and how our patterns of behavior are predictable upon the paths that we trod. Meaning that the more our thoughts are just throw this down over here or put your keys anywhere, and you have to look for them constantly because things are misplaced. We have let me just go on with the next comment, okay? And that is about elasticity. From the thesaurus, defines elasticity as pliability, a springiness, flexibility, and malleability. But I'll suggest my definition, especially in looking at maybe changing our mind about something, is that elasticity means permission. It means giving yourself permission to do or not to do. That elasticity means that we are awakening or we're continuing to sleep. And it's pretty much within our court. So I like what Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And Byron Katie said, when fully present, there are no more decisions to be made. Fully present. Fully present. When we're fully present, we're kind of unknowingly know what to do, and the result turns out to be most effective. We also have the ability to filter incoming data for compatibility. So bear with me here. My Google Correct suggested that we also have the ability to be omitted and discarded, and to just put it down that we filter incoming data for compatibility. The thing of it is that unless we're aware, thinking effectively is not an automatic response. It's not an automatic response. And so to leave out acknowledging that we have that ability to decide, we have that ability to make decisions or not to, is to render us like a puppet dancing on the strings of a marionette. And that those choosing, the filter system, the choice system, are always in effect. That we may not be open to, meaning that they're always there, just like our senses are always there, but we may be blind to this or blind to it. We could have deficiencies, but at the same time, we could just be not paying any attention and not hearing or receiving or knowing anything about it. And we may not be open to what someone else is saying or what is more reality. Anyway, so we're going to look at just one thing. The way you do one thing is the way you do everything. That's an old saying, but the more I think about it, the more I think that's really true. I know I usually do Greek the Greek prep on Monday morning just before broadcast, but because of a meeting this morning, I had to do that earlier. And then I also thought about Lynn Samada, whenever she talked about her Herculean task that she had. And there was a lot of life pressures, plus she was packing to go on a flight. And when she began to think about how focusing intently on what you are doing, it alleviated her situation. So Katie Byron's quote about being fully present, and we don't have to worry about making other decisions. Yeah. And Lynn Samaida's story is inviting and was inviting to me. But the results of those two things, I took them internally. I had been aware of Katie Byron's talk about fully aware previously, but it was Lynn's adding to it as to how she allowed it to keep her focused. So I am daily nurtured by such thoughts and experience the validity of follow-through. See, our bodies have neuro-linguistic pathways to our brain that is consistent with our behavior, whether it is effective or ineffective. The simple suggestion applies to every aspect of life and every activity in which we engage. So let's get into the Clutter Cure. Sometimes, I've got 12 little suggestions here. One is on time management. The thing of it is, and I've done a lot of classes on time management, but it's always a disclaimer to start off with, is you cannot manage time. You can only manage you and how you use effectively or how you waste. And there's a saying, redeem the time. Well, we can redeem the time by focused action, whether we're motivated or not. Because action is the most basic step of physics. That a static object will not move unless it's moved upon. It's the movement, the motion, the action that engenders energy and the motivation. So in your clutter cures, or in your, whatever it is that needs to be cleaned or straightened up, or file cabinets, or wherever, learn to habitually show up. Now, the habits that we have, the good habits as well as the negative habits show up before the need to fix that habit. Now think about that. The habit itself shows up. And sometimes whenever it begins to be ineffective enough, we begin to notice that something's got to give here.
Mm-hmm.
So that habit shows up before the improvement or the want for improvement shows up. So it's to be aware, and it's also to be humbled by it. To begin to, I think back whenever my daughter, one evening she made the comment to me, she said, "Isn't it time to fix Daddy's dinner?" And all of a sudden it dawned on me that we don't have a regular schedule of meals, or we didn't at that time, really, just kind of whenever. Anyway, it really began that, children do need schedules. They do need, but we can allow those things to be kind of humbling to us whenever we habitually show up to what we are doing. So we want to build your identity or rebuild your identity. You start where you are and you allow those changes to grow in you. Back to baby steps, a little at a time. You begin to see differently, act differently, think differently, and actually be different. Those baby steps confirm your innocence of securing a new identity, of wanting to be, of wanting to live the pattern and the mode and the behaviors that you've told your mind you want to live. And I didn't realize that I had put that little note there, but so I'll go ahead and explain that to you. The other day, I was going across town I was going across town, and I thought, oh, if I put if I pull off of the road here and put on the app, maybe I won't have to wait so long when I get there. So I did that, and I looked at a place, and there was 2 cars in it, but they were spread out, and it did not look like a busy place, but there was a tree. And in this 100+ degree weather here, I pulled under that tree, but instead of pulling in like, directly to the spot, I pulled in sideways underneath the tree. Well, I was busy, and I hadn't been there that long whenever someone pulled in. And all of a sudden, I just felt, oh, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry that's not the kind of person I am, to hog all this shade space. So anyway, as we begin to build or rebuild our identity, we can begin to see those things that previously we just sloughed off and didn't think anything about it. So another thing is to inventory. Assess what it is you want to do. Assess what it is that needs to be done. And when are you going to do it? A lot of times people will make these big, humongous preparations and plans for it, but without putting down the when, it may never get done. It gets keep putting off. Oh, well, I'll do it whenever the grandkids are grown, when the kids are grown. Well, maybe when the grandkids. And then how will you do it, and who will you need to help you with it? So always, we want to watch for distractions. Several years ago, I don't know, there's no present like the time, which is one of those things that came to me. No present like the time. And so I grabbed a Post-it note, and I wrote on there at the top, There's no present like the time. And I stuck it on my computer, on my tower. And then later, I added things to it. Like I put down in there, until you accomplish your most significant priority, everything else is a distraction. And another time, down here in the corner, then I scratched in here, why don't you have time to have time? And then I wrote to myself, why don't you have time to have time? Time is all we have, as long as we're alive. Anyway, it's looking at, and until you, everything else is a distraction. So decisions are based on our will. We're body, we're mind, will, emotion. Our will is where we make the decisions. Yes, I will do that. No, I will not do that. And so then as you can begin to look at them and write down your distractions. And why don't you have time for time? Is it too much TV? Is it too much Facebooking? Is it too much, do your own inventory. And then to set specific targets instead of going, start in one corner and go around, or start with one thing and see what comes next. And then also keep a running list of to-dos, not only things for you to do, but maybe things for you to help others in your organization do that could align up. And then have that running list of things that you need so that whenever you go into town, you've got it. You can always put that on your phone if you. And then always, always, always celebrate your accomplishments. We want to make time to rest and reflect. And we want to realize that some is better than none. So just getting in there and doing a little is better. Go to exercising, going to food, instead of crash dieting. We need to have it in moderation. And then go for excellence, not perfection. And so here on this slide, I have my business card. And it says International Solution Principles, International Training with Hometown Quality of Life Flair. And I had my name on there. And I proclaimed myself to be a motivational speaker, corporate trainer, and personal success coach. And one time, several years ago, I was speaking at, I was invited to speak. And as people were coming in, and this one guy picked up one of my business cards and he looked at it and read it. And he said to his neighbor, you can put anything on a business card. And then, so it started that day that every time I do speak for an audience, I tell them up front about the fact that you can't motivate anyone to do anything because we are internally motivated, whether that's through anger or whether that's through, other things. But if I say anything that strikes a chord within you, have you ever had a lawnmower or maybe a motorcycle that wouldn't start up real easy? You had to kind of kick it again and pull that string or kick it again. Sometimes we have those things inside of us that we want them to purr, but they don't. But when we hear someone else speak, it may trigger something. But I'm not the one that planted the seed. It was just a little watering onto. So Shania Nyquist has written a book called Present Over Perfect. I have not read the book, but I have read some of her things from the book. And I wanted to share this with you. And at the very end, it has a new, anyway, she says, sink deeply into this world as it stands. Breathe into the smell of rain and the scuff of leaves. This is where life is, here, now. You, just as you are. Me, just as I am. This world, just as it is. This is the good stuff. This is the best stuff there is.
Why doesn't every home in the U.S. have
Perfect has nothing on truly, completely, wide-eyed, open soul presence. Thank you very much for being here, and God bless.
Mhm.